welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, July 31st. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have another Gerrit Cole injury scare to talk about. Jackson Holliday is rejoining the Orioles. That happened about 15 minutes after we finished our trade deadline recap, so thanks for that, Orioles. Plus, we got some streaking hitters, slumping pitchers, and much more. And if you do want to hear about all the trades that went down, we put out a bonus podcast, so make sure to check that out. And you can get all of our thoughts on Jack Flaherty, all the Marlins moves. Feels like almost every trade involved the Marlins, Garrett Crochet not getting traded, and more. But for now, let's jump into Tuesday's action.
The impossible has happened!
All right, you heard the call there from the Mets broadcast. And Chris, we will start with you and a New York Met.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say Manaea getting 11 strikeouts is impossible. I believe he had a 9 strikeout game fairly recently as well. But, boy, that was probably the biggest box score standout for me. This was a 23 whiff effort for Manaea, which ties him for the Mets pitch tracking era record with Johan Santana. That's pretty good company.
Oh, yeah.
And David Peterson, which is less so. And I certainly think Manaea is more on the David Peterson side of things. Yeah, he had a 9 strikeout game 4 starts ago. He followed that up by giving up 5 earned runs with 1 strikeout in 5 innings against the Marlins. Manaea has these stretches. He's in one right now. He was in one earlier in the season where he can be pretty useful. I don't have any faith that this is the start of something real for Manaea. I think he's a streamer at best. He had, let me make sure. I think it was 13 of his 23 swinging strikes came on the sinker or the 4-seam fastball. Velocity was actually down on his fastballs in this one. Got 8 on the sweeper as well. I hate, and it's happened a lot this season, I hate when a player has a really good performance, and especially a pitcher, and we come on and we're just like, yeah, who cares? It doesn't matter. But that's mostly how I feel about this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would put Manaea in a similar category, that streamer type, Jose Quintana, Jameson Taillon. Those are among those, like those streamer types, those high floor type pitchers. Those are the ones performing best. And, Manaea, it's not just this start. His last 9 outings, it's a 2.58 ERA, a 1.03 WHIP, 52 strikeouts over 52 and a third. It also comes with a lot of walks, 21 walks, and the underlying numbers, not buying it. I believe the FIP and the XFIP during that 9-start stretch are both over 4. So, I pretty much agree with everything that you had to say. I will add that he threw his sweeper a little bit more in this start, and it's a really, really good pitch for him, a 45% whiff rate on the season. I'm not saying he needs to throw that pitch like 50% of the time, but, when it's on, it's a really good sweeper. And I think he's, capable of having good starts. Obviously not this good every time out. But the problem with Manaea is that as of now, it looks like he is at the Rockies next week. So I think he's worth rostering in the right matchups. Obviously in Coors Field, that is not the right matchup. So great start from Manaea. We will talk about some other waiver wire pitchers along with him a little bit later on. Let's talk about Eugenio Suarez, who is on fire right now. 4 for 6 with a triple dong. That's right. 3 home runs, 4 runs scored, 5 RBI in a game where the D-backs won 17-0 against the Nationals. Last 19 games for Suarez, he is batting .324 with 10 home runs, 19 runs scored, 25 RBI. One of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. He's 40% rostered. I think most of this, Chris, is just correction. He was so bad for a large majority of the season. I think there were reasons to think, all right, he's kind of getting towards the end of his career. Maybe this is the start of the downturn. But obviously he's showing that he is still capable of hitting lots of home runs. Are you putting any stock in this? Do you think Eugenio Suarez needs to be much more rostered than 40% on CBS?
Much more. I don't think I would say much more, but like if he was 65% rostered, I would wink at that. That seems reasonable enough. It's 10 home runs in the month of July. And the thing that makes it hard to buy in is just he's been bad all season, obviously, but he's been showing before this, especially, almost no signs of life. The underlying numbers across the board are pretty much the worst that they've ever been. 88.6 mile per hour average exit velocity. That's his worst since 2017. Barrel rate, also his worst since 2017. And he's still striking out 29% of the time overall. So I think like it's fine to ride him when he's hot. I think that's perfectly reasonable, but I don't see too much to believe in. That being said, it's not just a fluke, right? His average exit velocity in the month of July is up to 92.5 miles per hour. His whiff rate is actually the lowest it's been all season. I think he's locked in right now. And so I think it's fine to keep riding him, play the hot hand. That we saw before this.
Mm-hmm. A couple third basemen I have brought up recently, and they're mostly rostered, could be out there in shallower leagues at this point, but Colt Keith and Mark Vientos. Would you take Eugenio Suarez over either of those? Colt Keith, Vientos?
No, I would definitely rather have Vientos. Keith doesn't quite have like the underlying raw power. So I could see if I specifically needed home runs, I could see Eugenio Suarez being a better bet for that specifically. But it is also worth noting that Patrick Corbin was out there just throwing batting practice today. And it was one of those outings where like he was getting crushed from the word go. He gave up 2 runs in the first, 7 in the second, 2 more in the third, 11 overall. And he had to wear it.
Yeah.
And so
stop, he's already dead.
Yeah. Like he gave up 19 balls in play with a 92 mile an hour average exit velocity, like that. This was a special, but like, that's not to take anything away from Eugenio Suarez. Nobody else in the Diamondbacks lineup hit 3 home runs. So that's not the only reason he did it. But yeah, I think the very real signs of decline, I wouldn't just overlook.
How about Eugenio Suarez versus Michael Busch, who's been pretty good, pretty solid over the past month or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a similar situation with Vientos, where because Busch does have, the very good quality of contact metrics, I think I would rather bet on him. He hasn't been quite as good as Eugenio Suarez over the past month or so, but his early season run, remember, was every bit this good. And I think you look through the month by month, he has 1 month with an OPS below 780 out of 4. So I just think he's a better bet for consistent production moving forward.
Last name I'll throw at you, Jake Berger has actually had a productive July, 289 with 7 home runs and a 949 OPS. Jake Berger or Suarez?
I'm okay going Suarez there. I think that's probably a coin flip, and you're just hoping they both stay hot. But Suarez is currently hotter, so yep. I'd be fine going with him.
Yep, I think that's totally fair. Got to give a shout out, Chris, to Jazz Chisholm because, my gosh, way to make a mark. 3 games into your Yankees career, 3 for 6 with a double dong, 5 RBI. He accounted for all the Yankees runs heading into extra innings. And one of those home runs came off a lefty in Matt Strahm, who's been one of the best.
Very good lefty, yeah.
Yeah, one of the best relievers in baseball this season. So back-to-back games with 2 homers for Jazz. And how about this? I saw this stat on the Yes Network broadcast. Jazz had 3 multi-homer games in 405 career games with the Marlins. He now has 2 multi-homer games in his first 3 with the Yankees.
Yeah, first player in Yankees history with 4 homers in his first 3 games.
Wow.
I believe. I can't wait till he has his first 2 strikeout game in the Bronx and he gets booed.
Come on, Chris.
I mean, if I'm wrong, you can go ahead and tell me.
I don't think it'll be his first game, but yeah. like 2 games in a row with multiple strikeouts, yeah, then we're probably getting it. I know Scott mentioned the other day when we broke down the trade for Jazz that he thinks Jazz could have top 12 outfielder upside. Now, I didn't update my rankings yet. I plan to do that on Wednesday. Do you agree? Do you think Jazz could be that good rest of season, top 12 outfielder?
Could be, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that he's too far. I don't have it off the top of my head, and it's not loading right now, but I can't imagine he's too far from that in Roto already.
You have him ranked as your 14th outfielder.
Yeah, so that seems perfectly reasonable to me. So yeah, I could see it happening, sure.
Yeah, I have Jazz a little bit lower at 22nd, but again, that was before this move to the Yankees. So he'll climb inside the top 20 outfielders at least. He has second base eligibility. I believe, did he play enough at second to get it? And he's going to get third base.
I don't think he played enough second base, but we can check that.
Nah, he didn't.
Yeah, he only appeared in how many games? 3?
He's got to be off by like 1. That stinks.
Yeah, he needs 2 more to get second base eligibility. He needs 3 more for third base.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen with second base, but he is going to get third base eligibility, and really small sample. He's looked good. He's looked good out there so far defensively at third base. So that is Jazz, and so far off to a great start here with the Yankees. If you haven't already, make sure to sign up for the FBT newsletter. Scan the QR code in the top right corner. That will take you right to the website where you click on the FBT logo. You punch in your email address and you'll get a newsletter delivered right to your email inbox every single weekday. All different kind of news items and articles that Chris links, and just a lot of work that goes into it. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Let's take our first break, and when we return, Gerrit Cole injury scare. Jackson Holliday is back. We'll talk about both of those right after this.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game. This is Messi alive! Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back in the news and notes. Gerrit Cole was scratched from Tuesday's start due to general body soreness. He reiterated that he's not dealing with an arm issue and that he expects to pitch this weekend. Aaron Boone said that Cole has been battling a stomach bug as well this week. We know that Cole missed the first 3 months with right elbow inflammation. So I think it's fair to be skeptical, even more so when we're dealing with the Yankees. They've been pretty shady with how they've handled injuries over the past couple of years. So, Chris, your overall thoughts? Obviously, we don't know. We're just, throwing theories out there. But what do you think is going on here with Gerrit Cole?
I get the skepticism, but the fact that he's been dealing with that stomach bug this week does make me believe that it's just what they're saying. Like, I understand being skeptical that they're, given his history recently, given the Yankees' lack of
transparency.
That's the word with their injuries. But like, you get a stomach bug that can knock you out for a few days. I could see it. So I'm not going to be panicking yet. We'll see if anything comes out in the next few days when he tries to throw again, presumably, and maybe something goes wrong. But for now, I don't think there's much reason to be alarmed.
You know me enough by now, Chris, to know that
you get alarmed.
I am the pessimistic Yankees fan. So I saw this and I just immediately started thinking the worst case scenario. So hopefully that is not the case. Jackson Holliday is rejoining the Orioles. We know that they traded Connor Norby away to the Marlins in the Trevor Rogers trade. And so we thought, all right, maybe Kobe Mayo could get a shot here. But no, it turns out Jackson Holliday will be rejoining the team. And this season in the minors, a 271 batting average, 10 home runs, 8 steals, a 908 OPS, average exit velocity over 90 miles per hour. Still a fantastic eye at the plate, over 20% walk rate, nearly as many walks as strikeouts this season in the minors. 65% rostered is Jackson Holliday. Chris, do you think he's someone that is a must-add? You just got to go out and get him back on your fantasy teams.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we have concrete evidence to suggest that Jackson Holliday is not a sure thing. He had 36 plate appearances at the major league level earlier this season. He struck out 18 times. He was completely overmatched, and he still may be. right? We've seen with a lot of prospects, the leap from AAA to the majors is a really, really difficult one these days. And if he struggles again, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But it's a bet on elite young talent. It's a bet that won't cost you a top 150 pick in your draft the way it did earlier in the season. It'll just cost you some fab. And frankly, at this point in the season, probably not that much fab. It's not going to be 40%, 50% of your budget like it would have been earlier in the season. So yeah, I think you should absolutely be betting on Jackson Holliday. There are reasons to believe it won't work out, but look, Jackson Holliday doesn't turn 21 until this December, right? He is 5 months younger than Charlie Condon, the number 3 pick in this year's draft. He's like a full year, like a year and a half younger than Travis Bazzana, the number 1 pick in the draft. These are players who were picked like a week ago, and it's 2 weeks ago, whenever the MLB draft was. So that just gives you some perspective. I don't know if anybody had forgotten just how young Jackson Holliday is, but we're still talking about a guy that, like, he didn't drop in the prospect rankings because of his struggles. He's been very, very good since coming back from that elbow injury. It's like a 933 OPS with almost as many walks as strikeouts. Yeah, I think you should still be betting on these types of prospects when they get the call, even though we know that they've been struggling as a whole.
Let's just say theoretically, Chris, you were in a prospects only mock draft and you had the first overall pick. Would you take Jackson Holliday?
Okay, so you're talking like Junior Caminero would be another option. Jackson Holliday.
James Wood still qualifies.
James Wood, yeah. I mean, we're seeing pretty big red flags in his profile that have been exposed since the start of since he's gotten called up. So I think that's reasonable. Yeah, I might put. I think Scott had James Wood ahead in his midseason update. He had Junior Caminero as well, but Jackson Holliday still Scott's 3 prospect for fantasy. So that should tell you how optimistic we remain.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty clear top 3 with James Wood, Jackson Holliday, and Junior Caminero. The only reason I asked is because our buddy Chris Welsh is putting on these P1 ADP mocks right now. So they're prospect only mock drafts, 12-team leagues. I had the first overall pick in my draft, and I took James Wood over Jackson Holliday. But yeah, I did debate the decision. I sat there for a couple minutes and like, Wood, Holliday, I think Caminero's in the mix too. But overall, I did go with James Wood there. Let me ask you a few players that are right around 70% rostered in the middle infield. Zach Neto, he's had a pretty good season here. He's pacing for over 2020 this season. Who would you rather have between Neto and Jackson Holliday?
I think I'd rather have Holliday. I do like Neto, but it feels like there's a cap on how high the ceiling can be. Like, it's a pretty quiet 2020 pace, in large part because he's on pace for, I don't know, 75 runs and 75 RBI in a pretty mediocre Angels lineup. Doesn't seem like it's going to be getting much better. So while I do like Neto and I don't want to drop him, I would take the chance on Jackson Holliday's upside. Yeah.
What about Brandon Lau, who since the start of June, he's looked like himself. He's hitting for a bunch of power, pretty much playing against lefties. So
I looked this one up the other day because I wanted to see he is playing against some lefties.
His numbers against lefties this year are actually better against righties.
Yeah, he has started 35 out of, it looks like 47 or 48 games. So not quite every day since the start of, that's just since the start of June. That's what you mentioned. Since the start of July, did he start today?
I am not entirely sure, but I could pull it up.
If he did, then it's 19 out of 23 games. So that's a lot better. That might just depend on how much power you need, because we know Lowe is a standout there. Lau. Holliday, I think, is unlikely to be a standout in power, and you're just kind of hoping that the overall profile clicks.
And last name, Jackson Holliday versus Xavier Edwards, who stole another base on Tuesday.
Yeah, he did. Boy, this is not how my rankings look at all. So I think tomorrow I'm going to have some tough decisions to make because I kind of want to say Edwards. I think the things you're hoping for from Jackson Holliday, right? Like some speed, a really good batting average. I think Xavier Edwards might be able to give you that. Holliday should hit for more power, obviously in a much better lineup, but he's going to have a worse spot in that lineup. That's one thing to keep in mind is there are going to be more runs and opportunity, more runs and RBI in the Orioles lineup, but Edwards hitting leadoff is going to get more plate appearances than Holliday. So that probably comes down to how badly I need steals because Edwards has 9 already in like 30 something games. That's going to be hard to replace.
Yeah, I think it's circumstantial. If you play in a categories league and you need speed, I think it's a no-brainer to go with Edwards. If you play even in a points league and you just need production right this second, I would rather start Xavier Edwards if he's just on your bench and you're looking to stash for upside and you want the highest upside player. I think Holliday has more upside. So it just probably comes down to the circumstances of your fantasy team. Mike Trout had another setback and is being reevaluated. When asked if Trout could return this season, Angels GM Perry Manassian said, quote, "We'll see. Not so sure." We mentioned this on our trade deadline recap. Christian Walker was placed on the IL with a strained left oblique. He's expected to miss about 3 weeks. He'll replaced by Josh Bell, who was acquired on Tuesday. Apparently, the Yankees backed out of a Jack Flaherty deal due to medical concerns, and this is a good call by you, Chris. Again, you brought that one up on our deadline recap. The fact that he went for so much less in a deal to the Dodgers than what it cost Yusei Kikuchi to go to the Astros. And so the only thing that it could have been is the medicals, right? We know Flaherty has an extensive injury history, and it sounds like the Yankees backed out of a deal because of that. So hopefully Flaherty can hold up with the Dodgers because it's a great situation.
The thing to keep in mind is there is not some independent arbiter that is deciding this guy's healthy and that guy's not when a player gets traded, right? It's the team looking at the players' medicals when the other team sends them and deciding on their own. And look, there's probably not a pitcher in baseball who, if they have an MRI on their arm, obviously, but any part of their body, really, it's not going to show something that you could get scared of, right? These are professional athletes. What they're doing is very difficult on their bodies. It could be nothing, or it could be the Yankees being especially cautious after the Frankie Montas situation a couple of years ago, or it could just be like, if we're going to be skeptical about the Gerrit Cole stuff, then I don't think it's unreasonable to follow that with, well, maybe the Yankees training staff just isn't great and they're overreacting to something that another medical staff wouldn't get. So I don't think this should change how you feel about Jack Flaherty. Like, oh, there's something in his back. Yeah, we knew that. He missed a start and had 2 injections in his back. Like that kind of goes without saying here. So at least from our perspective, where, I mean, I guess maybe you take $1 off your NL only bid for Jack Flaherty, but other than that, it doesn't change how I view him rest of season.
And I think it's mostly house money, right? Where you got Jack Flaherty.
Yeah.
I understand that people are relying on him at this point, so I don't want to downplay that, but you got him really late in your draft, or you picked him up as a free agent, early on in the season. And so you've been playing with house money for someone who's performed like a top 20 starting pitcher up to this point. So hopefully he can stay healthy. And if he does, I think he will perform quite well with the Dodgers. That is Jack Flaherty. Josh Young was in the Rangers lineup on Tuesday, batting 7th. He was activated Monday, but was not in the lineup. Not exactly sure why. Francisco Alvarez has missed 2 straight with left shoulder soreness. Mason Miller threw a bullpen session. He's on the IL with a fractured finger on his non-throwing hand. Lane Thomas made his Guardians debut, batting 2nd in the lineup. Pretty awesome spot there, but between Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez. Eric Fedde will make his Cardinals debut Friday against the Cubs. Isaac Paredes made his Cubs debut, batting 5th, playing 3rd base. He went 0 for 4. Christopher Morel made his Rays debut. He was batting 3rd, playing 2nd base. He went 1 for 4 with his 19th home run. And Morel currently has 3rd base and outfield, so if he plays 2nd base consistently, he will pick up that eligibility as well. Welcome back to St. Louis, Tommy Pham. He appeared as a pinch hitter and he launched a grand slam. Good for him. Miguel Vargas also made his debut with the White Sox. He was batting second as the DH. He went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts in that one. Starling Marte hopes to start a rehab assignment as soon as next week. He's been out since June 25th with a right knee bone bruise. Evan Carter is not expected to play again during the regular season. He's been out since late May with a lumbar sprain. And some news for next year. Hopefully nothing changes. But Braves president Alex Anthopoulos told reporters that Ronald Acuna is likely to be ready for opening day. He had surgery to repair a torn ACL back in early June. Let's talk some waiver wire pitchers. And we already mentioned Sean Manaea, but Gavin Williams had a strong start at the Tigers. He threw 5 shutout innings with 8 strikeouts, had 16 whiffs on 90 pitches, 12 of those on the fastball, which looked really good. And last 2 starts have both looked great for Gavin Williams, both also against the Detroit Tigers. Lance Lynn, solid up against the Rangers, 5 innings, 1 run with 3 strikeouts. And Michael Wacha turned in a strong start at the White Sox, 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, only had 7 whiffs on 89 pitches. But we are now going on almost 3 months where Michael Wacha has a 2.56 ERA and a 1.07 whip over his last 12 starts. Chris, how would you rank Wacha, Lynn, Sean Manaea, and Gavin Williams?
So one thing to keep in mind, and it's enough to drop. I mean, I think Lynn might have been the bottom either way, but he had a knee issue in this one that he mentioned that they don't know the severity of. He's going to get tested on Wednesday, but he pitched through that. So yeah, I'm not particularly interested in Lance Lynn anyway, but
his velocity is way down.
Yeah, the fact that he's hurt right now makes it a lot easier to just ignore him. I would probably go Williams, Wacha, Manaea, Lynn. But if I needed someone to start right now, I might be okay prioritizing Wacha over Williams. He doesn't have as much upside, certainly, especially as a strikeout pitcher. But we haven't seen a lot of reason to believe that Gavin Williams has a lot of strikeout upside this season. The last 2 starts have been very good, obviously, but I'm mostly referring to the lack of whiffs here. The fastball was really good, 12 whiffs on 32 pitches. He had 4 whiffs on his other 3 pitches. He only threw his changeup 2 times. The slider still doesn't look right. It still doesn't look like it did last year, at least. I think, we talked a lot in his early start about him throwing a cutter. And I'm wondering if that was just a classification error because he's just throwing his slider now, but it's harder. It's about 3 miles an hour up from last season. And it's not getting near the same amount of whiffs that it did last season. And so, he threw 90 pitches to get through 5 innings today. Part of that makes me think, well, this is a guy who doesn't have multiple swing and miss pitches. And while the stuff is good and you can get through lineups consistently without it, it's going to be more difficult. So I don't think I'm ready to trust Gavin Williams just yet.
And Spencer Schwellenbach, who we spoke about over the weekend, he is very clearly at the top of this list, right?
Yeah, I would prioritize him.
What about somebody like Hayden Birdsong?
Yeah, that's one that we have seen the swing and miss with the non-fastballs, especially recently. I think I would put Hayden Birdsong below Schwellenbach, but ahead of the Tuesday night guys.
All right. What about some names in deeper leagues? Do any of these matter for fantasy? JP Sears was awesome at the Giants. He threw 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts, had 14 whiffs on 95 pitches. Ryan Nelson, great up against the Nationals, threw 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts in July. 6 games, 5 starts for Nelson, 2.41 ERA, a .96 whip. Jonathan Cannon, a strong start up against the Royals, 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 3 walks to 2 strikeouts. I don't think he's good, but he's had some randomly good starts like this over the season. It could just be that's baseball kind of thing.
Yeah, it's happened like 3 or 4 times now with Cannon where every time it happens, I go in and I look and I'm like, is there something? And there just doesn't really seem to be anything there. So I think you look at the overall numbers, and while there have been those 3 different starts, 4 different starts with 7+ innings and 1 or fewer runs, but it's like 433 FIP, 447 XFIP, less than 6K per nine. I don't see much reason to buy into Jonathan Cannon.
Yep. And the last name on this list was Bryce Elder, who had a strong start at the Brewers. 6 1/3, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, had 13 whiffs on 91 pitches. And the velocity was up across the board. Sinker up 1.3, the slider up 1.2 miles per hour. Chris, do any of those other names matter in deeper leagues? Bryce Elder, Ryan Nelson, and JP Sears.
So JP Sears gets the White Sox next week.
Yeah.
I think you can stream JP Sears next week. I don't think any of these guys, even in like a 15 team, like in the 15 team league I'm in, I don't think I would be all that interested in adding any of these guys unless they had a good matchup. So like Sears has the White Sox next week. I think he can be pretty useful in that situation. Ryan Nelson has the Guardians. I think I'm avoiding that one. I know he's had a couple of good starts lately. I think it's 2 of his last 4 with 9 strikeouts, or 2 of his last 3, something like that. But
I just don't see anything in the swing.
Yeah,
strikes.
I don't see the underlying skill set to support a strikeout breakout, and the overall numbers just aren't particularly impressive. So I think Nelson's a pretty easy fade.
Let's talk about Jeffrey Springs, who was not great in his debut up against the Marlins. 3 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 3 strikeouts. He did have 10 whiffs on 76 pitches. That's a 13.2% swinging strike rate. He led with the changeup, which is typically his best pitch, but the velocity down quite a bit. Springs doesn't rely on a lot of velocity, but his fastball was down 1.8 miles per hour. He averaged just under 90 with that pitch. The slider was down 2.1 miles per hour. So I think he can build up. We've seen this with a lot of the pitchers that have returned from injury, that it's taken some time. Some of them haven't even gotten back on track yet. Someone like Gerrit Cole, who we were expecting much more from. But the velocity being down coming off an elbow injury, Chris, it's kind of concerning here for Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah, it's a concern. You know, he was decent, but not great on his minor league rehab assignment. And remember, Jeffrey Springs is not someone with a super long track record of high level production. He was quite good in 2022, but he wasn't an ace. And then in 2023, obviously he looked really good for 3 starts. So, you know, coming off the elbow surgery, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here, but the velocity being down almost 2 miles per hour is a concern. Makes me worried that he's not going to be able to recapture that upside. And this is a situation where, you know, we had kind of been grouping him with Clayton Kershaw and Robbie Ray. And was there another pitcher that we were throwing in there?
Clayton Kershaw, Robbie Ray, Kodai Senga.
Kodai Senga, that was the other one. Okay, that makes sense that he's off the mind now.
Rest in peace to the calf.
Ray and Kershaw, I think, have shown us more reasons to be optimistic. So I will easily rank them ahead of Springs. And, you know, he's got this is about as soft a landing spot as you could ask for, right? Not just against the Marlins, but against the gutted, if you can gut what has been left of the Marlins this year, with, you know, like 3 major league quality caliber hitters. You want to see more from Jeffrey Springs than this. So definitely a disappointing start.
If you've been stashing Jeffrey Springs, I probably wouldn't want to drop him just because you've been holding on to him. But decisions have to be made, right? If someone like Spencer Schwellenbach is out there,
yeah,
I would make that swap. Yeah. What about Springs versus Birdsong?
I think I'd go with Birdsong now that he's, you know, pretty much guaranteed a rotation spot.
Yeah. What about Springs versus Gavin Williams?
That's a little tougher. I think they're in similar spots. Williams has shown more, but he's had more opportunities to show more. Remember, after his first start, there was a lot of pessimism, and he's kind of slowly rebounded since. So I think I think I would go with Williams.
I think so too, but it's close. It's really close.
Like, his velocity is not just back, it's up.
Yeah.
Back from that elbow injury. So, you know, while we have our nitpicks, the slider especially, that's a positive sign overall.
Let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll talk some waiver wire hitters, some others who are very hot right now. We'll do that right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Welcome back in. Let's talk some waiver wire hitters. We already spoke about Jake Berger earlier in the show. Let's talk about Jorge Polanco, who is hot all of a sudden for the Mariners. 2 for 4 with a walk, a homer, 3 runs, 2 RBI. Last 9 games, he's batting .294 with 5 homers and 1 steal. The overall number is still not great, and he's dealt with lots of injuries over the past couple of years. There still might be a player there somewhere with Jorge Polanco. He's 30% rostered. Very clearly, he doesn't compare to like the Tyler Fitzgeralds and the Xavier Edwards. But if you get into a deeper league, Chris, and Jorge Polanco is out there, where does he stack up against Connor Norby or Gavin Lux, who's been hot lately?
I would say ahead of Lux, who has shown remarkably little at the major league level prior to the last 3 weeks, really. Norby, I mean, I guess you'd have to prioritize Polanco just because we don't know if Norby is reporting to the Marlins or if he's going to AAA. So if you need the help right now, Polanco's more likely to give it to you. If we find out Wednesday morning, that Connor Norby is going to join the Marlins and be part of their squad moving forward, I think I'd rather take the chance on the younger player than Polanco, who, even if he bounces back here and keeps this up, I think we can say pretty confidently that it's not going to be a huge upside. He's not going to sustain the 294, 5 homers over the last 9 games pace.
Yeah. What about Miguel Vargas, who should play every day for the White Sox moving forward? Would you rather take a shot on Vargas or Polanco in a deeper league? Man,
Vargas is tough, right? Because he's 24. I think so. He's not that old. I think he's actually the same age as Connor Norby. He really hasn't shown very much at the major league level. It's a sub 700 OPS over 400-ish plate appearances, but minor league track record's still really strong.
Yeah.
Consistently throughout his time at AAA, especially, he has been like a 900 OPS bat. So I think I would rather take the chance on the upside there than, again, Polanco. We kind of know what he is in a best case scenario.
2 names in 5 outfielder leagues. Victor Robles, the guy stayed hot, 2 for 5 with a steal and 3 runs scored. In July, .373 batting average, 2 homers, 7 steals, and OPS over 1,000. And Victor Robles has led off 5 in a row for the Mariners. Austin Hayes had a big game with his new team, the Phillies, 2 for 4 with a sock and a shoe, his 4th home run, his 2nd steal. And he has started all 4 games since joining the Phillies. He also has been batting towards the back end of the lineup. Chris, in 5 outfielder leagues, who would you rather take a shot on, Victor Robles or Austin Hayes?
It's entirely league dependent, right? It's what you need. I think Victor Robles at the very least is going to give you steals. That probably will be the only thing he gives you. But I will point out, over the past 100 plate appearances, he has a 351 xWOBA. He has, I believe, by far the best batted ball metrics of his career. Victor Robles does 11.7% barrel rate this season for Victor Robles. That's like a legitimately well above average mark. That's like a 70th percentile mark. 33.8% hard hit rate is a career high. 88.7 miles per hour average exit velocity is a career high. I don't know what it is. I think it's probably nothing. I think it's probably just a random hot streak, but there is something there, and it's enough, given that I feel confident he's going to steal bases, that I'm I actually think Victor Robles is worth picking up in categories leagues.
Yeah, I think so too. Between these two, look, if you need speed, it's a no-brainer for Robles. If it's just in a vacuum, who do I think will be better rest of season? I think I still have a little bit more faith in Austin Hayes. We
Yeah.
saw him be a solid player last year, and while he's batting towards the bottom of the lineup, it's one of the best lineups in baseball with the Phillies. So, yeah, it is close. It's become a lot closer, but yeah, I would take the shot on Austin Hayes just in a vacuum between those two. Hitters who have been hot for quite some time. We have 4 names on the list. Austin Riley has been much better, 4 for 5 with a run and an RBI. Last 39 games, he is batting .315 with 11 home runs and OPS over 1,000. Yainer Diaz has been crushing it for the Astros, 4 for 4 with his 10th home run. And since the start of June, if you remember right around then, he got benched for a couple days as like a break. And since he's come back after that, he's just been awesome. 345, 7 home runs, 35 RBI, and OPS over 850 during that stretch. Manny Machado, 2 for 4 with a double dong here on Tuesday. Last 34 games for him, 301 batting average, 10 home runs, and OPS approaching 900. And Lawrence Butler will not stop. Just having a bonkers July, 2 for 5 with his 12th home run. Another homer off of a lefty, by the way. This one came off Robbie Ray. I will get the updated July numbers, but I guess for the first 3, Chris, do you think Riley, Diaz, and Machado are just back on track? Not that Diaz has the longest track record. And I don't know, every day that goes by, like, are you just buying in more on Lawrence Butler's maybe being a stud? I don't know.
A stud is probably overstating it. Like if I'm going to be intellectually consistent, I've been very skeptical of Jackson Profar, who has been good for much longer than Lawrence Butler has. So, I don't want to make the mistake of giving Lawrence Butler credit for not having a major league track record before this, the way Jackson Profar does. I think it's still reasonable to approach it with skepticism. That being said, Lawrence Butler probably not 100% rostered yet. I think what he's shown over the last month or so, he absolutely has to be. The underlying skill set, there's very, very, very good skills there. He hits the ball really hard. He's a good athlete. Maybe he's just figuring it out. The AAA numbers were good as well. He's not that old. So I do think Butler is worth betting on. Riley and Machado, yeah. I never really worried about Riley. Machado, he had the elbow thing coming off the surgery, so I was a little concerned about that. But this has been going on long enough that it's clear that either he just got off to a slow start because of the elbow surgery or if it was just a random slump. But either way, I think he's back. And then Diaz, like you said, not a long sample size with this. But we're now talking about half of this season and all of last season, where Yainer Diaz has been a very good hitter. He's not going to hit 345, but the 20 homer pace that he's on in this stretch, if he hits 275, 285, obviously that's a must-start catcher. I think that's what Yainer Diaz is.
And what helps is he bats cleanup for the Astros. I mean, this is one of the best lineups in baseball, and yeah, we have a catcher batting right there in the middle. So the counting stats should be there. The batting average is good, and he's up to 10 home runs now. It wouldn't surprise me if, I don't know, we get up to 16 to 18 by the end of the season, something like that.
XBA is 297. Like, look, last year, if you looked at the underlying numbers, he looked like Salvador Perez.
Yeah.
Like peak Salvador Perez. Okay, he's probably not that. The quality of contact metrics significantly worse than they were last season. He's not hitting the ball. Actually, the hard hit rate is higher. It's just the barrel rate. He's not getting as much optimal contact, but for as aggressive as he is, he does not swing and miss very much. He shares that with Salvador Perez. He's got plus power. Yeah, I think he's just a no. You don't have to think about it. Surefire must start catcher.
The updated numbers, by the way, for Lawrence Butler in July: 379 batting average, 10 homers, 6 doubles, 2 triples, 23 runs, 27 RBI, 4 steals, a 1265 OPS. He is up to 84% rostered on CBS and 79% on Yahoo. So he's He's
Yeah,
getting up
should
there.
be 100% in all formats, even points, just in case, right? Like points will be his worst format, but the way he's hitting right now, if it's at all real, it won't matter.
Yeah. Again, that is Lawrence Butler. One hitter that's actually cooled off in July, Wyatt Langford. You remember he had that huge June. He has taken a step back here. 1 for 4, hit his 6th home run here on Tuesday. But the updated July number is 225 with 1 homer, 2 steals, 630 OPS. I dug in a little bit. He's still hitting the ball hard in July. Lots of line drives. He's pulling the ball. For some reason, it hasn't translated to barrels. I think there's enough underlying here in the month that I would bet on Langford having some good stretches down, the over the final 2 months of the season. But it is just frustrating that, the helium got out of control. He had that big June. We thought, all right, this is it. It's happening. And then boom, July comes and he's kind of regressed the other way. That is Wyatt Langford. In a vacuum, Chris, who would you rather have, Langford or Lawrence Butler rest of the season?
I would feel worse about losing Langford and him going off, I guess is the cowardly way that I will answer that question.
All right, so with hitters heating up, that means we do have pitchers who are struggling, and that has been the case for most of July. But Max Scherzer here on Tuesday was not very good at the Cardinals. Well, let me not say that. It was a mixed start. The results were not good. 4 innings, 3 runs. But he had 5 strikeouts. He had 17 whiffs on 68 pitches, a 25% swinging strike rate. So, yeah, we'll go with mixed start from Max Scherzer. Chris Bassett has been struggling at the Orioles. 4 innings, 5 runs allowed. And over his last 5 starts in July, 7.01 ERA, a 175 whip for Chris Bassett. Justin Steele has struggled over his last 3 starts. This one at the Reds, 5 innings, 5 runs, 4 walks to 7 strikeouts. Oddly enough, control hasn't been there last 2 starts. He has 7 walks. And last 3 starts overall, it's a 7.20 ERA and a 2 whip on the nose. And Robbie Ray struggled with that juggernaut of a lineup known as the Oakland A's. 4 1/3, 7 hits, 4 runs allowed, 3 walks, 3 homers allowed. Still had 11 whiffs. Velocity was down a little bit compared to his first start, but still up compared to where he was at last year. But anything that stood out here, Chris, the struggles from Robbie Ray, Steele, Chris Bassett, and Max Scherzer.
So I'll start with Bassett and Steele because I think they're the least interesting. With Steele, like we've seen, the highs have been so high and the lows have been so low this season, and you add it all up, and he's got a 3.38 ERA and a 1.11 whip. So it's one of those ones where it's like it's been a little frustrating along the way, right? Like he had that 9-start stretch with a 1.5 ERA.
Yep.
And then he follows that up with 3 starts with, 2 of them have been really bad, including this one. I don't really think there's anything there. And then Bassett, I don't know. We see these stretches like him pretty regularly, and then he tends to figure it out. And there doesn't seem to be a good explanation for why the good stretches happen and why the bad stretches happen. So I tend to just assume he'll figure it out. Scherzer, yet again after this start, this is becoming like a recurring theme. This is like the 3rd or 4th time. Complained of arm fatigue. And that is why he only made 68 pitches. Presumably that is why he was not all that effective. This has happened several times now this season, and it might just be that he's 40.
Yeah.
Like, not to put too fine a point on it, but it might just be that he's 40 and he can't handle the rigors of starting every 5 days at the major league level. Unfortunate, but I'm at the point now with Max Scherzer where I'm kind of viewing it as anything I get from him the rest of the way is a bonus, and I can't build him into my mental model as a core part of my team. I'm not dropping him, but that's where I'm at on him. And then Ray, frustrating. Velocity was down after his first start. I didn't watch this, but what I noticed in the first start was he couldn't throw the breaking balls early on, and it took him a while to find the feel for them. And the fact that he threw 65% fastballs in this one makes me think that it was something similar, and he just didn't find the slider and curveball this time out. The slider actually was in the strike zone like 55% of the time. The curveball was like 27% of the time. I don't necessarily know if he wants to throw either of those pitches in the strike zone very often, but probably somewhere between 55 and 27% is where he'd want to land with both of those. So that just suggests that he didn't have it today, and maybe he's not quite ready to be the must-start guy that you hoped he would be after a very promising debut, but my overall level of enthusiasm for Ray hasn't changed much.
I was surprised that he came back out for the 5th inning. I believe he was up to 82 pitches through 4. Obviously was not efficient, but in his second start back, they pushed him back out there, and he gave up a 2-run homer in the 5th inning. So it made the line look worse. Not that it was good beforehand, but obviously that did Robbie Ray in a little bit more in this start. Max Scherzer, just wanted to mention, he's 73% started on CBS. And what's tough is he's a 2-star pitcher for next week. So you might just automatically think, oh, he's Max Scherzer, I got to start him.
Yeah.
He gets the Astros and at the Yankees.
I mean, Bassett's kind of in a similar spot next week where he's got Baltimore and suddenly Oakland. Looks like a matchup that you're at least a little wary of.
Yeah, I don't think either one is a must start.
Well, and this is challenging a truism that I think the FBT podcast has held for a long time, which is if you aren't going to start a guy in a 2-star week, are they must roster? I would say Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett are both must roster. But
yeah,
I think it's a conversation worth having. And I feel it more with Scherzer than Bassett. I feel more confident that Bassett will bounce back and be a reliable starter than Scherzer. Scherzer's upside is higher, but
yeah,
it's been a while since we've seen the must-start version of Max Scherzer, and it just still doesn't seem like he's physically there, and may never be.
Yeah.
Again, he's 40.
I have questions on both, man. I mean, Chris Bassett, he's 35 years old as well. So no spring chicken. The walks have been a big problem for him this year and consistently.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
3.5 walks per 9. His swinging strike rate is, if not a career low, it's close to it. So there's more balls in play. He's giving up more line drives. So it's led to more hits plus the walks. The whip is massive. Obviously, it's just led to more runners on base and scoring. So yeah, I don't know that Chris Bassett will definitely come out of this like he has in previous years. The innings just might be adding up here a little bit for Chris Bassett. Some other pitching leftovers from Tuesday. Corbin Burns, a quality start up against the Blue Jays, 6 2/3, 2 runs with 7 strikeouts. Luis Castillo, a quality start at the Red Sox, 6 innings, 3 runs with 4 strikeouts. And Tyler Glasnow, a strong start at the Padres, wasted in a game that the Dodgers were up 5-0. They actually wound up losing that game. 7 innings, 3 runs, 8 strikeouts, 14 whiffs on 102 pitches. Chris, anything to add on Glasnow, Castillo, and Corbin Burns?
So for the newsletter, I always do like a standout section where I write about the most notable performances from the previous day. And I haven't finished writing it, but I didn't include any of these 3 guys on the list because they all basically did they weren't perfect, but you can't complain about any of these starts. Castillo, the strikeouts still aren't there. 4 and 6 innings today, 9 whiffs on 10 pitches. It just hasn't quite been there. He reworked the slider, but that doesn't really seem to have fixed the issue. I don't quite have a good explanation for it. And overall, the numbers are still mostly what you hoped for, especially when you factor in the volume that he gives. But it's been frustrating to have Luis Castillo on your team, even though he's, still a top 20 starting pitcher for me.
Yeah. Someone who was drafted as a top 5 to 7 starting pitcher coming into the season. I remember heading into my Tout Wars draft, I actually had 2 names written down that I wanted as my ace, either Luis Castillo or Zach Wheeler. Well, I got Luis Castillo. So that did not work out exactly how I had hoped. I think at this point, it's not to the same level as someone like Kevin Gausman, but I think my mindset, my expectations for Castillo, they've just changed. I don't expect SP1 outcome anymore. I think he's more of a pretty clear SP2. The fastball velocity is down 1 mile per hour. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but for someone like Castillo who relies on getting whiffs with his fastball,
Yeah, I mean,
I think it does matter for him. So
among starters last season, Luis Castillo was, I think, by far the standout in whiff rate with his fastball. It was like 34%, which is really, really high for a fastball.
Yes.
So, yeah, I still have him as a top 12 starting pitcher, but it's behind Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, and I do feel like there's probably a teardrop there where Castillo is closer to the Pablo Lopez, Zach Gallen types than to the guys ahead of him.
Yeah, it just feels like there's no starting pitcher that deserves to jump up into that next tier, right? It's
like Freddie Peralta has not had a great year. Pablo, I would feel fine ranking Pablo Lopez ahead of Luis Castillo, but
I think that's
I wish I felt better about it.
Yeah.
I'm
looking
Could you do Shohei Managa? I think you can make a case for it.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it yet. Joe Ryan has slowed down a little bit. Like Sonny Gray is struggling in his own ways. Zach Allen has had some weird results lately. Logan Webb has been pretty bad for a while. It's like, yeah, outside of that top 11, it feels a little globby.
Yeah. Yeah. 11 ends with Aaron Nola. I have Cease just ahead of him.
Yep.
Gilbert, Kirby. I feel really good about all of those.
I feel like the top 11 in some, like, if you want to have, Sale number 1 or Scooble number 1 or whatever, like whatever order, I think there's a top like 6. And then the next 5 guys, I think you can put in pretty much any order, and I wouldn't really argue with it. And I think you make a case for Dylan Cease belonging in that top 6 too. But then outside of that, like, for me, it's Logan Gilbert at 11, where I feel really, really good about him. It definitely feels like there's a drop off after that.
100%. Yeah, all the names you mentioned, I'm looking up and down. Logan Webb has had his struggles. Gallen his struggles. Then you get into Justin Steele has struggled recently. Flaherty's got the back. Grayson Rodriguez, Gerrit Cole.
Yeah, it's just tough to find someone like.
It's crazy, Chris?
Let's move Blake Snell into the top 12.
It might be Hunter Green. It actually might be Hunter Green, which is great.
This is the problem. I wasn't on the most recent podcast, I think, when we talked about Hunter Green. I wish I had a better explanation for why he's been so good this year. Like the explanation is that he's gotten much better results on balls in play. Time to eat. But why? Like, if you look into the location data, which Pitcher List has really great location data on their pitcher pages, and like he's throwing middle about as often as he did last season. Like his locations haven't changed that much. And so like my thought is, well, the command's gotten better, but I don't know if that's true. He's throwing the splitter 5% of the time. Like, if I had a better explanation for why Hunter Green has been so good, I think I would be willing to make that aggressive move. But like, I don't have that. And maybe I don't need that. Maybe it should just be Hunter Green. Maybe it should be Blake Snell after 3 good starts.
Maybe.
I don't know. But it's
Michael King's been a stud for like 2 months.
Yeah. Like I probably have him ranked way too low. He's 39 for me. Bailey Ober is 38. Those guys are probably way too low.
All right, we're making moves here on Wednesday, Chris.
But it definitely feels like we're back to the glob.
Yeah.
I thought we had escaped it.
I agree.
But like, it's a better glob.
I don't know, man. The way the ball is flying out in July, I don't know.
Last year it felt like nobody was good. Like, my concern is not that Zach Gallen is bad or that Sonny Gray is bad or whoever you want to pick. It's just that they don't feel like a top 12 starting pitcher. And that's what they would have to be to leapfrog Luis Castillo, who also doesn't feel like a top 12 pitcher.
Exactly. Yep. I think that's right. Some hitting leftovers. Anthony Santander continues to destroy baseballs. He has 8 home runs in his past 12 games. He's up to 31 on the season. Welcome back to Cody Bellinger, who went 2 for 4 with his 10th home run and 2 RBI. Rafael Devers had himself a huge game, 3 for 5 with his 24th home run, added 4 RBI, now batting over 300 with a 981 OPS on the season.
Kind of quietly having his best season.
Yeah, I think in terms of batting average and OPS, I think this
I don't think he's ever had like a 980 OPS before.
He might have had another standout batting average season.
He had a 311 batting average in 2019, but only 32 homers that year. Career high OPS 916. So yeah, this is by far the best in power and overall production. It's just the batting average not quite as good.
Career high 94.4 average exit velocity.
Yeah, he's
for Rafi Devers.
So, I mean, a reminder, he's only 27. Gosh. For as long as he's been around, he might just be entering his prime.
I've said this before. If he played for any other team outside of the Mets, I would probably have his jersey. I am such a fan of Devers. Like, he is just so good. He's so fun to watch, man.
Also, if he played for any other team, he might have like two 40 homer seasons because he plays in one of the hardest parks for lefties to hit for power in.
Yeah. I don't know that I've shared this. I think I have, though. I saw him the first year he got called up in September. I saw him hit a home run off of Aroldis Chapman, who was on the Yankees at the time. It was like a chest high 105 mile per hour fastball. Devers just took it to the other way, hit it to the opposite field in Yankee Stadium as like a 21-year-old. And ever since then, I said, this guy's amazing.
Yeah, he's pretty bonkers. I had a similar thing recently where I almost bought a Pedro Martinez jersey because he's one of my favorite players ever. And I didn't want to walk around in public with people thinking I'm a Red Sox fan, you know?
Yep, we're gonna
I don't want someone to come up to me and be like, "Oh yeah, go Sox." I'm like, no, go Pedro,
go Pedro. That's
but right. I root against them all the time. Otherwise,
get his Expos jersey.
That'd be a good one.
Yep. Some bullpen updates for the Reds. Alexis Diaz walked 1, but picked up his 21st save. For the Mets, Edwin Diaz recorded the final 4 outs, 2 via strikeout for his 13th save. For the Yankees, Clay Holmes got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. Can you guess what happened next?
Yeah.
He gave up a run on a walk and 3 hits. Now, this has happened a few times this year where he just gives up these little dribblers, and sometimes it's out of his control. But part of the problem is that he doesn't get swing and miss. He doesn't get as much as a traditional closer. So there are more balls in play. It's more likely for things like that to happen to Clay Holmes than it is someone else. Watching that game unravel the way it did, all I could think of is like, the Yankees are not going to win a World Series with Clay Holmes as their closer. It's just not going to happen.
The other thing I will say, at least for our perspective, this is a fantasy baseball show, not a New York Yankees podcast, is getting out of the trade deadline with the moves that the Yankees made. I don't think anybody's coming for that job.
I think I mentioned this on our, I don't know if I did. Maybe we were talking beforehand. I'll just throw it out there. Luis Gil. I don't think it's crazy.
You did mention that. It's possible, but they just haven't. I don't think there's been any public discussions about him changing his role the way there has been for Gerrit Crochet.
Yeah, so. No, that's absolutely right. That is 100% speculation on my part. For the Royals, Hunter Harvey got the 8th inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up 1 run on 2 hits. With James MacArthur unavailable, it was the lefty Sam Long who got the 9th inning. He struck out 2 for his first save. For the Angels, Ben Joyce got the 8th inning with a 1-run lead, and he went 3 up, 3 down. Hunter Strickland got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead, and then struck out 1 for his first save. Ron Washington, kind of likes to lean on the veterans. It wouldn't surprise me if this is just the way they go.
I will point out, it's the Rockies, so like who cares what part of the lineup it was, but he did get the 8th inning with a 1-run lead with 4, 5, 6 coming up.
That was Ben Joyce.
That's a higher leverage situation than the 9th when they had a 3-run lead. So
true.
I would still bet on Ben Joyce getting the next save opportunity for the Angels, but I'll admit that's only because of the quote from Ron Washington early in the week when he said, if Luis Garcia gets traded, Ben Joyce would get, quote, the most of the save opportunities. Maybe this is just not part of the most group.
And then for the Dodgers, they continue to search. Blake Trinan got the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up 2 solo homers to Manny Machado and Jackson Merrill, and the Dodgers would eventually lose in extra innings. To stream or not to stream on Wednesday, and I think this might be one of the worst streaming days of the year, but I'll go with Brian Bayo up against the Mariners begrudgingly. If you need another one,
I could see Kyle Freeland at the Angels being okay, but
that's what I was going to say, Kyle Freeland.
Bayo's the only one I would want to consider.
And then on Thursday, we only have a 5-game slate, so not too much going on here. Ben Lively gets the Orioles. It's a tough matchup.
I wish it was a better matchup. I wish Dean Kramer had a better matchup. Ryan Feltner might be the best option, which
at the Angels, he
tells you the quality of the choices the next 2 days.
He's pitched better lately, but it's gross.
I think he's actually decent. Like if he pitched somewhere else besides the Rockies, I think Ryan Feltner might be like a streamable option at least. Also, can we just talk about how stupid the schedule was this week? 12 games on Monday, 15 on Tuesday when the trade deadline happens, and teams are going to be running out like skeleton crews like the Marlins.
Yeah.
And then only 5 on Thursday? Like how?
But they always have the Tuesdays are always a full slate. So I mean, I guess they could have either had the trade deadline on Monday or Thursday,
or just don't have the full slate on Tuesday.
I guess, yeah.
Like just play the full slate on Thursday. Like,
yeah. I mean,
I don't know. I get it.
July 4th. So
yeah, I understand but like, it was dumb.
They probably need to push the deadline back a little bit more now that they added extra playoff teams because so even today after the deadline, there might be some teams that don't know if they're going for it or not. So it's just, it's maybe something they consider in the future. We are going to wrap there. For Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.